while following up on a rumor that I heard about 3 years ago of possible concentration camps in America. I came across the following story. As bizarre and scary as it is, it could easily be written off as being too unbelievable, but what kept me interested was the ungodly cost of the airport, the firing of the contractors, the weird murals painted on the walls. A picture does say 1,000 words, and the credible witness, Phil Snyder, who mysteriously died after blowing the whistle on underground bases, who visited the airport and left behind documented evidence. The story talks a lot about the Masonic influences and other secret societies that I never knew existed, in which is why people should hear it and consider it as a warning. My special guest tonight is Alex Christofor, author of Pandora's Box, an exposé of the British instigation through Washington, D.C. over the last 200 years. You thought you were free? This stuff has been going on forever. The idea was to make us perceive we were free and independent, but actually we are still subject to the British Commonwealth. She has a lot of information here, and we are going to have her back again for more. I talked to her last night. Just a fascinating individual. She is going to talk about the Montauk Project and extraterrestrial influences, and more. Last night we talked about a few things. We talked about the Denver airport and what is really going on there, and we talked a bit about the Montauk Project and Al Bialik, and then we skipped around a bit about some of the things in Pandora's Box. You mentioned that the Queen of England has been buying up a lot of property in Colorado under an alias. Why don't we start on the subject of the British?
All right. The information, primary, that is in Pandora's Box, covers how the major corporations, railroad and banking concerns in this country were set up through a trust that was originally known as the Virginia Company, and there was a survivor to the massacre of the royalty in France during the French Revolution, Marie Antoinette, and Kinley's son, the Dauphin, who survived and was smuggled out of France. The Dauphin went to the United States, via England, where he signed a contract with the Virginia Company. He came here to help the businesses, especially banking, in the United States. The deal was that everything would remain under English control or subservient to it, and that brings us right up to today, because we are still looking at everything falling under that trust system going back to the Crown of England. It is mind-boggling to think that everyone in this country has been led to believe that the people in the United States had won independence from England, when in fact, they never did.
Well, look at President Bush, wherein 2 years ago he went to England and was knighted by the Queen. Where is that coming from? Is it that he was a faithful servant?
You bet. All of them are doing the bidding, and it goes back to their secret societies, and the establishment of the New World Order, which all leads back to the House of Windsor. There has been in this country for a long time a grooming process whereby people carry on the bidding of the Crown of England. That is one of the things the system involving the Rhodes Scholars was set up to achieve. Cecil Rhodes set it up to groom people for this task, to carry the United States into the New World Order. It appears, from what I have been able to find out, that the Crown of England has had this very skillfully planned for hundreds of years, and it could be possible that they have been privy to information that not many of us have, about the chaos involving Earth changes that is coming. It is my understanding that England is not going to make it through the changes, so they set up a whole new empire over here. That goes back to some of the things we discussed before, about lands being bought up in Colorado.
Yes, the area is of a pretty high altitude, where it will be safe.
Yes. Plus, all the symbolism that is apparent in the layout of the new Denver airport says that it is a control center for world control. There is a lot of secret society symbology at the airport. We started researching all of this to find out what it all means. It's all very scary. A gentleman by the name of Al Balik, who has been involved in some very unusual government projects in the past, told me that the Denver area is where the establishment of the western sector of the New World Order will be in the United States. Little bits and pieces keep coming to me, confirming things I have not had confirmed.
Do you know of John Coleman?
The Committee of 300.
Yes. What's your take on that?
I think his information is fantastic. If he had had the information that I put in Pandora's box when I put it together, it would have blown his mind. But, as far as I know from my standpoint, both sets of material go hand in hand, right down the line.
Some of these things about the background of the British invasion, taking over the land over here, while they let us think that we are running this country. How they had a bone to pick with the Tsar of Russia, years ago. How they have pushed the socialist revolution. Like they say, the sun never sets on British soil. About some of these things, on the airport in Denver. Would you mind discussing some of those things again?
Well, the first thing that got my attention at the airport was the capstone that I saw in a photograph that had a Masonic symbol on it. So, I really wanted to go to the airport and see that, because I thought it was very unusual.
The capstone?
The capstone, or the dedication stone, for the Denver airport, has a Masonic symbol on it. A whole group of us went out to the airport to see some friends off and see this capstone, which also has a time capsule embedded inside it. It sits at the southeastern side of the terminal, which, by the way, is called the Great Hall, which is what Masons refer to as their meeting hall. And, on this thing it mentions the New World Airport Commission. I have never heard of that, have you?
Never.
It has a Masonic symbol on it, and it also has very unusual geometric designs. It depicts an arm, rising up out of it, that curves at a 45-degree angle. It also has a thing that looks like a keypad on it. This capstone structure is made of carved granite and stainless steel, and it is very fancy. This little keypad area at the end of the arm has an out-of-place, unfinished wooden block sitting on it. A gentleman that was with me on the first trip out of the airport has since died. They say he committed suicide, but everything else tells me that this is not possible. No one can double-tie a catheter behind his own neck and strangle himself. I just don't think that is possible. But his name was Phil Schneider, and he started blowing the whistle on all this stuff going on in the underground bases that he had helped build for years and years. He worked on the underground bases at Area 51 and Dulce, New Mexico, as well as several other places. Schneider told me that this keypad-looking area looked like a form of techno-geometry, that is alien-oriented, and that it had something to do with a directional system, whatever that meant, that functioned as a homing beacon to bring ships right into the Great Hall. In the same general area, on this capstone, there are some most unusual designs on the floor, that are all Masonic in nature, which lead right back to the Black Sun, which goes back to Nazi symbology. See, the secret societies are supposedly into sun worship. The Nazis were into Black Sun worship, which connects with the idea of Saturn. Saturn and Satanism kind of go hand in hand. Then, we have this system of murals at the airport, that are the most grotesque things you've ever seen.
What's on the murals?
I say that they are about what they plan to do to us, and the world as a whole. Not what has happened, or some fantasy. One of them, that is very unusual, has 3 caskets, with dead people in them.
That's part of the ritual, connected with the Skull and Bones Club.
Yes. There are evidently 3 groups of people that they would like to see dead. The first casket has what the artist told me was a Jewish American child, a little girl, and she has the star on her clothes, and a little Bible, and a locket.
Jewish lineage is passed through the female.
Yes, well, all these caskets depict women who are dead. Then, in the center casket, there is depicted a Native American woman, and the last casket has a black woman in it. Now, normally I would not have thought too much about these murals if I had not done a lot of research. Even in the government documents, I have run across gene splicing discussions on how they would like to splice out specific races, and also, whoever these people are, do not like the Jewish people. This is just one of the huge murals. This same mural depicts the destruction of a city and a forest, and there is a little girl holding a Mayan tablet that speaks of the destruction of civilization. There is a mural that depicts this thing, standing over a city, that looks like a green Darth Vader, with a sword, that has destroyed the city. This character is huge, and there is a road depicted with women, walking, holding dead babies. This same mural extends over to another one, which depicts all of the children of the world, taking the weapons from each country on Earth, and giving them to a central figure, which is a German boy, who has this iron fist and anvil in his hand, that is totally out of proportion to the child's body, beating the swords into plowshares. I thought, well, this is very odd, depicting a German child doing this. What all of this symbology in the airport mural seems to convey is that not only do we have a secret society behind this, but that it is a German secret society, working in the vicinity of the New World Control Center.
It is interesting, when you consider Operation Paperclip, wherein all these Nazis were brought to the United States to be groomed, financed, and basically brought back into power.
Well, I know they are here, because I have seen them, alongside the Americans, in the more sensitive areas of the airport. But, these paintings are most disturbing, and very unusual. When I first tried to contact the artist, and talk to him about these murals, he told me that he was given guidelines on what to paint, and put in them. When I showed up in his studio, I asked to see the guidelines for the last two he was working on. He suddenly went brain dead and said, of course, there are no guidelines. It took myself and two other people, over 8 months, to figure out all the symbology that is embodied in these murals. It turned out that some of these are trigger pictures, containing symbology, designed to trigger altered personalities of people that have been groomed in MK Ultra-type programs for specific tasks that they have been trained to do in terms of something connected with satanic rituals and mind control. I had one woman that called me out of the blue one night, and she was really disturbed about some information. She told me many different things that later turned out to be known MK Ultra triggers. Also, almost every aspect of these murals contains symbols relating back to secret societies. When you get the overall view of what they are talking about in these things, it is very, very scary. It goes back to the Biodiversity Treaty, getting rid of specific races of people, taking over the world, and mind control. There is one picture, in which every plant turns out to be mind-altering, or poisonous, and all the animals are Masonic symbols, used in literature in every country in the world. It took a very long time to track all this stuff down, and figure out what they are trying to say. The one way they tell stories is in pictures. It's right there, in our face, when you go into the airport. Most people look at them and say, boy, those are crazy-looking pictures. What are they doing in this airport?
Some interesting facts about Denver International Airport. The airport was built in 1995 on 34,000 acres, 53 square miles, in spite of the fact that Denver already had what everyone said was a perfectly fine airport, Stapleton, which was ordered closed when Denver International was built, so there wouldn't be any competition. In fact, the new airport has less gates and less runways than Stapleton did. All it does have is a lot more acreage. More acreage than an airport that size could possibly need. Most which sits unused. They say it's in case they need to do any future expansion. The airport is the 7th busiest airport in the US, according to our 2002 Trans Chicago Business Report. The initial cost of this new beast was to be $1.7 billion, but by the time they were done playing games, having problems, getting bailed out and got extra government money, and money from private corporations on top of that, it cost about $4.8 billion. Obscenely over budget. Words used to describe the airport were buried in technical problems, poor project management, overwhelming complexity, and America's most inconvenient airport. It was built in a high-wind area. Stapleton had not been, that causes it to be shut down or flights delayed often. The extensive automated baggage system was so messed up, such a circus of errors, that it was worse than unusable. It was an industry joke. But it had to be built, and built there. Some say the reason that the airport was built, and there was no stopping it, no cost spared to do so, and why it was so over budget, and took so many years to build, is because it's really an underground military base, combined with a civilian detainment camp, and new information has surfaced that it could be a safe haven for the world's elite after the economic breakdown in America. Even though the area is basically flat, the expense and time that was taken to extensively lower some areas and raise others. They moved 110 million cubic yards of earth around. This is about 1/3 of the amount of earth they moved when they dug out the Panama Canal. The airport has a fiber optic communications core, made of 5,300 miles of cable. That's longer than the Nile River. That's from New York City to Buenos Aires, Argentina. The airport also has 11,365 miles of copper cable communications network. The fueling system can pump 1,000 gallons of jet fuel per minute through a 28-mile network of pipes. There are 6 fuel hold tanks that each hold 2.73 million gallons of jet fuel. This is somewhere in the, no one will ever need this much range. Granite was imported from all over the world, Asia, Africa, Europe, North and South America, and used in making the main terminal floor. This is a ridiculous expense, especially when you're already over budget. They say the floor pattern echoes the roof design and subtly reinforces passenger flows. The huge main terminal is Jeppesen Terminal, named after Alfred Jeppesen, who was the first person to create maps specifically for aviation. The company is still in business today. This area is known as the Great Hall. It's said this is what the Masons named their meeting place. It is 900 feet by 210 feet. This is over 1.5 million square feet of space. All told, there is over 6 million square feet of public space at the airport. The airport brags that they have room to build another terminal, and 2 more concourses, and could serve 100 million passengers a year. The airport flew 36 million in 2001. The entire roof of the airport is made of 15 acres of Teflon-coated woven fiberglass. The same material is on the inside as a layer, also. The place looks like a bizarre scene out of the movie Dune, comprised of huge, spiked tent-like structures. The material reflects 90% of the sunlight and doesn't conduct heat, so you can't see into the place with radar or see heat signatures. The only way to get to the other 2 concourses or terminals from the Great Hall, or vice versa, is by the airport's train system. There are more than 19 miles of conveyor belt track, luggage transport cars, and road, and their own underground tunnels that move baggage and goods. They're so huge you can drive trucks through them, and some remain unused. Now you mentioned that underneath this airport, it goes down many levels.
Yes.
Does the fact that all these underground levels are there have something to do with why it took so long for this airport to open?
Well, the gentleman that I was dealing with, Phil Schneider, said that during the last year of construction, they were connecting the underground airport system to the deep underground base. He told me that there was at least an 8-level deep underground base there, and that there was a 4.5 square mile underground city and an 88.5 square mile base underneath the airport. It is very unusual that they would allot a 50 square mile area on the surface at which to locate an airport in the middle of nowhere, unless they really plan to use it for something very unusual later. There is a 10-mile, 4-lane highway out to this airport, and there is nothing out there in between the airport and Denver. Not even a service station, at least in September 1995. The people in Denver are really upset with the fact that this airport went in the way it did. There was this fellow who wrote a book in which he made the statement that they had a copy of an audio tape on which a Denver city official was talking with people from the Civil Intelligence Agency, and that he was paid $1.5 million to allow the airport to be built, no matter what it took. It appears that there was a lot more interest in getting the airport built from just officials in the Denver area. They plan on using this facility for something else other than just landing planes.
So, this guy got you down there to take a look at the underground?
Well, he was invited to go along on the trip. I had a friend that actually got us down into the active area in the underground. It's very interesting down there. The baggage equipment area is very unusual. All the old luggage equipment that wouldn't work right doesn't look much different than the stuff that is working today.
You were telling me that there are huge concrete corridors with sprinklers all along the ceiling. What are these sprinkler heads doing in a concrete bunker, pray tell?
Well, this is the same question we asked. These shafts are huge and run along adjacent to the tram line on both sides. So, there are 2 of these huge shafts, large enough to fit a 2-lane highway in there. There are very few openings into and out of the tram shaft, but at the end of them, going out into this 50 square miles of acreage, is a huge steel door that would facilitate the entrance of a great big truck. It could be used for almost anything, but what is so unusual about it is that about every 5 or 6 feet on the ceiling, across almost the full width of the area, there is a pipe with 3 or 4 sprinkler heads. This goes on for the full length of the thing, which must be close to a mile. There are 2 of these shafts, and I got a picture in the mail the other day, which was very unusual. It was taken by someone on board the tram in the shaft. The picture appeared to actually show ghost-like figures on it. It was a mother and a baby wrapped in a blanket. When you were down in that concrete shaft, both times I got nauseated. Now, the tunnel shaft that the tram comes in on could connect up with an underground tunnel coming in from 5 buildings that were built and buried. There was already a 40-foot diameter tunnel there when construction started. Those 5 buildings they built 3.5 years ago, and suddenly they said, "Oops, these are in the wrong place," and buried them, along with a very high-tech runway that is buried under about 4 inches of dirt. It seems insane that they would build a very technical building complex with interlocking tunnels and a tunnel going back to the tram tunnel at the concourse, and then state that they built it in the wrong place and cover it up with dirt. I don't believe that people are that stupid.
No. Projects like that are strategically planned, and they just don't go and do that.
Some of these 5 buildings are 150 feet tall. There is one 78 feet tall, and one that is 126 feet tall. They are all in that range. From this complex there is a shaft that runs to Concourse C. When they started this project, as I said, there was also a huge 40-foot diameter shaft brought in there from somewhere that was off limits to the work crews. It was there when the project was started, and everybody that worked on these projects, there were 5 different contractors, and the people on each contracted crew did not interact with the other ones. When the project was done, everyone was fired and sent away.
You would think that during this massive construction, they would not be able to keep this stuff secret.
I think a lot of the people saw things that disturbed them so much that they would not talk about it. I know several people who worked on the project that managed to find their way down into the depths, probably close to the deep underground base, and saw things that scared them so badly they won't talk about it. I interviewed a few of the former employees on these construction crews that worked out there on these buildings that ended up buried, and they are afraid to talk. They say that everybody is real nervous about it, and they decided to tell some of the secrets that they knew, but they don't want anybody to know who they are. So, I can tell you that it is a very unusual and spooky type of place, and if you are a sensitive person, you get nauseated as soon as you enter the perimeter of the airport. Especially when you go down underground. You become very nauseated and nervous. There is also so much electromagnetic flux in the area that if you get out on the open ground around the airport, you will buzz.
Where is this flux field coming from? What do you think the purpose of this is?
I think that it's coming from some kind of underground electrical system, because where we were, there were no power lines, and the whole place was just buzzing with this free energy floating around. Very unusual. In addition, there are areas in the underground that have chain link fences with the barbed wire tops pointed inward, like they were there to keep people in, not keep people out. All these areas are there, acres of it, and none of it is in active use. There are many terraced areas that go down. One area in particular is forbidden to go into unless you are wearing a biological protective suit. They say there is some kind of unidentified biological fungus in that area that attacks people's lungs.
Some kind of way to hide something that is in this area.
Well, we think that area is one that leads to deeper levels underground at the airport. But it is surrounded by a chain link fence, and you can't get in there. We think this is the area that one of the electricians kind of stumbled into, that went down about 6 levels below the 4th level, and ran into some really weird stuff. He won't talk about any of it now.
Real weird stuff.
Also, at the airport, there are what look like miniature nuclear reactor cooling towers, and I don't understand why they are there. When people asked, the reply is that they are part of the ventilation and exhaust system. Ventilation and exhaust from where?
What do you think it's for?
I think it is all hooked up to the deep underground.
A satellite view of these ventilation systems measure over 50 feet tall, 249 feet across and 363 feet in diameter. And this is only what is visible on the surface. Notice the jet sitting on the top left-hand corner. It could actually fit in one of those shafts. just when I thought the murals and the gargoyle statue made the airport bizarre enough. On Monday, February 11, 2008, this 6-ton, 32-foot-tall, fiberglass sculpture was erected at the airport. In 1992, it was commissioned at the cost of $300,000. This is the largest statue ever created by 66-year-old Luis Jimenez, who in June 13, 2006, was standing on a ladder in his studio in Hondo, New Mexico, hoisting a large section of the Mustang, when a cable broke, and a piece of the sculpture came crashing down, pinning him against a steel beam and slicing through an artery in his leg. He died on his studio floor, leaving his family to finish the sculpture. The airport originally wanted to have laser beams beaming from its eyes, but they were replaced with red lights instead, so they would continue to glow. And the reason for these glowing eyes is quoted by the airport: so they would ward off evil spirits. A good thing to have at an airport. Unquote. It leaves one to wonder if this horse is the same horse depicted on the cover of the book, The Montauk Project: Experiments in Time, by Preston B. Nichols.